it's kind of a two-piece special when it comes to the punchline culture around the Hurricanes right now. The first punchline you're hearing is that Miami is always overhyped. Mario Cristobal never won anything. They're not going to do anything. Miami, you say this every year, and you say good things about Miami just because of the logo. That's the first punchline you hear. The second punchline you hear is that Carson Beck isn't that good either. Last year at Georgia, throwing double-digit interceptions. I mean, he had a good year the year before, but we all kind of got to see what Carson Beck actually is with this last season at Georgia, right? He's not going to do anything at Miami. Everyone's quick to make jokes, but I'll just say this. When you look at Mario Cristobal and his body of work since he's gotten to Miami, you would think that what he's done at Miami relative to the punchlines is they must be missing bowl games all the time. I mean, they must be falling flat on their face relative to expectations. Every single year, the Canes have won more games since Mario Cristobal got there. It's been a steady upward trajectory. 5-7, 7-5, 10 games last year. And they didn't win the ACC, so I understand you fell short of your expectations. But the way that we talk about Miami, to me, is a little bit warped relative to social media to what Miami's actually done on the football field. I would also say this. The thought that Mario Cristobal hasn't won anything in general is just wrong. I mean, he's won multiple conference titles. And when you look at how they've recruited, and this isn't winning anything in actuality, but look at the process and the progress for Miami. He's recruited at a really high level. Miami's had the best class in the ACC the last 3 years. 2 of those last 3 years, they've had a top 10 class. I want to go back to what I just said a second ago. The process and the progress at Miami, to me, I'm buying stock because I see the arrow continuing to point upward. And in the modern age of college football and social media, we don't really like to give any patience to the process or pay attention to trajectory because we want to talk about what's happening right now. And I understand that. I think there's value in speaking to things that are actually happening in the moment. But when we totally just discount the way things are trending, I think we do ourselves a disservice. I think that's where we get into trouble when we talk about punchline culture. Miami is nowhere near a finished product. Nowhere near. And Mario Cristobal, I think, just now is getting his sea legs when it comes to the foundation of his roster. You got the guys that were, guys he recruited on early that are just now starting to become upperclassmen. Francis Mawanoa, Ruben Bain. Really good players that are now actually a proof in the pudding of the development and the process that Miami's had internally for some time now. And you know who Miami reminds me of? They remind me a lot of Texas over the course of the last couple of years, just in terms of how we've talked about them. How often do you hear somebody in your group chat or someone on social media say something to the effect of, every year we talk about Texas being a team that could compete for the conference title, or they got a bunch of 5 stars, they got a bunch of talent, and then every single year we're sitting here in December talking about the mediocrity that Texas football achieved. Every single year we're saying that, right? Well, people are saying the same thing about Miami right now. And just because it hasn't happened yet in actuality doesn't mean they're not doing the right things behind closed doors. Again, you won 10 games last year. I understand Cam Ward was a massive part of that, but you know who else was a massive part of that? Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator. He's still there. Mario Cristobal, he's still there. I just told you about all the recruiting classes. I think there's a lot to be made for the progress internally at Miami that's eventually, I think, going to show itself on the field here in 2025 and beyond. So if you're talking about Miami underachieving and all this, that, and the other, it might happen, but I wouldn't act like Miami's been just a non-factor in the world of college football for the better part of the last couple of seasons, especially last season. Now, the Carson Beck punchline culture, I think, is very intriguing because his, I think, is a little bit more straightforward. You either believe that what you saw last year from him at Georgia was reliable as to how good of a quarterback he is, or you say, well, there was a lot more context as to why he wasn't as successful in 2024 relative to what he did in 2023. And I think, to be honest, some part of this with the discussion around Carson Beck is just how public he's chosen to be as a football player off the field. And I want to give this disclaimer. When you choose to be public with your life off the field, you welcome all the extra conversation that comes with that when you don't perform on the field. And Carson Beck, even though he had a decent season last year, throwing for over, right around 3,500 yards. I think it was like 3,485, give or take. When you throw as many interceptions as you do, people are going to point to everything else they have access to in your life. But for me, I choose to believe that Carson Beck, over the course of one season at Georgia, playing another year as a starting quarterback in Athens, I don't think he just got worse at football over the course of 1 year. I don't. I think that it's probably more likely that without a running game and without Brock Bowers and without Ladd McConkey, he had less success. That feels pretty fair to point to. Georgia still won the SEC. It wasn't like Carson Beck just fell flat on his face as the quarterback out there. So the idea that Miami's getting damaged goods in Carson Beck or he's not going to be all that or whatever, like, again, I'm telling you, I think there's a reason now why NFL scouts a year ago said this dude could be the first pick in the NFL draft. Now, it didn't happen that way, but to act like there's not still the skill set and the potential to do that, to me, is mind-boggling. So all the people with the punchline culture, Miami's not that good. They're always overhyped. They're always this. They're always that. Mario Cristobal's not a great coach. Social media says one thing. What's happening on the field, though, for Miami with how they're trending upwards, with how Carson Beck has played before in his college football career and what he could be, I think that may say something else here in 2025. So get your laughs in now, get your jokes in now, but I might hit the delete button on some of those tweets when it comes time for those games to actually be played and what we're looking at here in the month of December in the world of college football.